What's up everyone, Ryan DeBomb here. Today, I will be taking a look at the 2017 science fiction adventure comedy short films from yours truly, both titled Billy the Bag, and Billy the Bag 2. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. Billy the Bag starts with a plastic bag named Billy, rolling around on the grass and pavement, with a narration from the Australian filmmaker. Billy used to be a typical plastic bag, used to carry grocery items, until one day he became a living thing. There's a rumor that he was an experiment, but there's a lack of evidence that that is true. Billy the Bag wants revenge on how he was treated, and plans to destroy everyone, and everything that exists, by polluting the whole world, including Australia's vegetation. Oh no. Billy decides to enact his evil plans by going inside one of the apartments. He jumps to the door handle to open the door. Once inside, he's spotted by a dog named Rex. Billy stays still, as the dog starts smelling him. Billy decides to attack the dog, so he jumps up, but due to being weak, he just falls down. Billy Bob is watching a comedian on TV, then he notices Rex smelling the plastic bag, oblivious to the fact that a plastic bag got itself inside the house. Anyway, Billy Bob decides to investigate why a plastic bag is in his apartment, and as he gets a closer look, Billy jumps on his face, and starts strangling him really tightly. Billy Bob struggles to get the plastic bag out, and succeeds momentarily when he spots a knife on the floor. The plastic bag continues to strangle him as he reaches for the knife. As soon as he grabs the knife, Billy Bob stabs the bag numerous times. To make sure he is dead, Billy Bob goes to search for a pulse. Since when does a plastic bag have a pulse? Oh whatever. He feels no pulse, and believes he truly took down the bag, and as he gets himself up from the fight, he notices the Australian filmmaker in his apartment filming the whole time for National Geographic. Billy Bob questions what he's doing there, and the filmmaker tells him he's doing this for work to inform people about pollution. Billy Bob gets angry, and threatens him with the Second Amendment. The filmmaker gets spooked, and runs out of the apartment instantly. After he leaves, Billy Bob goes back on the couch to continue watching TV, believing all of this is over. Or, is it? Billy the Bag 2 starts with the Australian filmmaker running in the desert, trying to get back home. He eventually trips and falls down. Once he gets himself back up, he comments to himself that he should have worked for Discovery instead. Like that's going to stop you from breaking into people's houses to film. Anyway. He starts walking in the desert, and as he does, Billy the Bag sees the filmmaker in the distance, and decides that he's going to kill him. The filmmaker realizes he's lost, originally thinking the desert was a shortcut to his house. He decides to climb a nearby small hill, hoping to see how far he is from his house. Once he reaches the top, he looks around for his neighborhood, but it's nowhere to be found. Upset, the filmmaker doesn't know what to do. Then, he gets a greeting from Billy the Bag. Billy jumps on his head, and starts to strangle him. The filmmaker is struggling to get the bag out, and starts losing balance as he is moving downhill, and then falls down on the ground. Billy squeezes every bit of air out of the filmmaker, killing him for good. 4 months later, Billy Bob wakes up from the sound of his alarm. He gets out of his bed, and walks up to the coffee maker in the kitchen, to make himself a cup. After putting in some creamer, he takes a sip, and puts the mug on the counter. Really man, you're just going to leave it there? Billy Bob greets himself to his dogs Rex and Riley. He takes Rex to the couch, and sits down and turns on the TV. At the same time, his best friend, Kyle, comes in the living room. Kyle sits down, and the two exchange in small talk. Rex leaves the couch, and walks out of the living room and through the kitchen. As he continues walking, he notices a plastic bag in the hallway with a dog toy, being used as bait. The dog starts to smell the toy, and as that happens, the bag tries to snatch the dog, but Rex moves fast enough to avoid it. Billy Bob and Kyle hear what's going on, and Billy Bob gets off the couch and quickly rushes to the kitchen. Rex is seen held in the cage, and Billy Bob tries to unlock it to get him out. As he does this, he gets hit on the head by the bag, and then it starts to strangle him. Billy Bob cries out for Kyle to aid him. Kyle rushes to the kitchen, and there, tries to get the bag out. He struggles at first, but he gets it out, but then the bag jumps on Kyle's face, and starts strangling him instead. Billy Bob scrambles to look for a weapon, and decides to grab one of the big kitchen knives. He hurries back to Kyle, and is struggling to get the bag out, but eventually succeeds, and then starts stabbing it. He punctures a hole through the bag, and checks its pulse. Believing it's dead, Billy Bob goes over to Kyle, and cries over his untimely death. The bag jumps back up, and angry over Kyle's death, Billy Bob aggressively starts cutting up the plastic bag, and then tears it in half, truly killing it this time. Billy Bob goes back to mourn the death of his fallen friend, but fortunately for him, Kyle still has a pulse, but is unconscious and unresponsive. Billy Bob, being a good friend that he is, decides to drag Kyle to his room, to let him rest. Meanwhile, another plastic bag, Joe the Bag, was looking through the doggy door. Distraught by his friend Bob the Bag's death, he decides to report the incident to his leader. Joe tells the leader that Bob is dead, but also that he set the bombs up all over the house. The leader is pleased, and orders Joe to return back to the base so they can watch the explosion from a great view. Meanwhile, Kyle is seen unconscious on his bed, and devastated and exhausted from the morning's events. Billy Bob decides to take a nap. He does so, and as that happens, Joe goes over to the console outside and activates the bombs so they're ready to go. Billy Bob hears all of this, and scurries out of the bedroom and into the backyard. At the side of the house, he sees Joe, and confronts him about what he's doing. Joe denies everything, but Billy Bob orders him to deactivate the bombs. He does so, and Billy Bob asks what he's doing there and who's sent him. Joe states they're ordered to kill him and Kyle. Billy Bob demands to know where the leader is, and threatens to destroy Joe if he doesn't. Joe complies, and states he will lead him to where the base is. Billy Bob goes back inside, and gets his stuff together and a change of clothes. On the way out, he says goodbye to his dogs before leaving the house. And so, their journey begins. Billy Bob and Joe enter in the car, but strangely, the ignition won't start. Billy Bob exits the car to see what's going on. He lays down on the ground, and sees that the plastic bag's tampered with the circuitry. Therefore, he decides their only option is to walk there. Before leaving, Billy Bob grabs Joe, and a knife that was sitting in his car, then the two proceed on their adventure. Later on in the day, the two of them arrive at the desert, the same desert the Australian filmmaker was killed at. They continue walking, then they arrive at the base, which is supposedly the big bush that is in front of them. Joe tells him they need to hurry up and get to the bush. Once inside, Joe confesses that this is not the base, but in fact his home, and states they must hide from the leader. He states that he's not evil like the leader, he was forced to be an assassin, otherwise, he would have been killed. He confesses he doesn't want to work for the leader anymore, but proposes to Billy Bob that they should team up and kill him. Billy Bob is skeptical, and wants to know specifically why they're hiding at his place. Joe tells him that the leader is very powerful, and that he is not ready to kill him yet, and that he should be trained in doing so. Billy Bob asks him why he would need training when he was able to kill the two plastic bags easily. Joe reveals that the first bag Billy Bob killed is the leader, Billy the Bag. Billy Bob cannot believe what he's hearing, wondering how he can possibly be alive when he felt he had no pulse. It turns out his pulse only stopped for 20 seconds, and afterward ran out of the apartment. Billy Bob wants to know why Billy the Bag attacked him in the first place. Joe is not sure, but he knows that the bag is becoming too powerful and that he must be stopped. Also the fact that the desert they are standing on is his territory, with rumors that the desert is haunted due to the fact that people don't make out of it alive. During the whole conversation, Billy Bob notices a familiar-looking backpack on the ground, the same backpack that belonged to the Australian filmmaker. Billy Bob takes a moment to mourn the death of the filmmaker, and apologizes to him and regrets what he said to him about threatening him with a gun. After that, Billy Bob starts his training, which is unfortunately not seen. 2 hours later, while resting from the long hard training, Billy Bob asks Joe who Billy the Bag is and where he comes from. Joe tells the story from 10 years ago, when Billy the Bag once was an inanimate bag. He was being experimented by a strange scientist to make inanimate objects become living things. His intention was to create a bag that is good-willed and kind like a decent human being, but when he was about to put Billy in the oven, the bag jumped out of the pot, and started strangling the scientist, killing him, and leaving his body behind. Instead of Billy being a good bag, he was an evil bag, classifying the experiment as a failure, in which the reason for this is unknown. Years later, the Australian filmmaker just moved to the United States, and started working for National Geographic, and wanted to make a lot of money, until one day he saw Billy moving by himself. The filmmaker saw this as a perfect money-making opportunity, so he took his phone out, and started recording the bag. Billy of course went with it, as he was waiting for his moment to strike. After the filmmaker got kicked out of Billy Bob's apartment, he ran as fast as he could, and left the apartment complex and went into the desert, using it as a shortcut. He hears a strange scary scream in the distance, and continues running. He happens to pass by Billy, and Billy decides to strike the filmmaker when he least expected. The filmmaker throws his water bottle behind his shoulder, which lands on Billy. Billy is angered by this, then decides to eat it. He realizes eating plastic makes him stronger and more powerful, exciting him to kill. After killing the filmmaker, after that day in the course of 4 months, he's been hiring assassin after assassin and developing an empire of plastic bags, to rule over all humanity and destroying it once and for all. At 7 o'clock that night, Billy Bob and Joe are sitting around in the campfire, and Billy Bob talks about his job as a mechanic. Hold on a second, if you're a mechanic, why didn't you try to get your car fixed? Oh whatever. He also talks about Kyle being lazy. Kyle doesn't do anything, only plays video games, eats, and watches porn. Despite all of that, they're good friends. Joe tells Billy Bob they should get to bed so they can get enough rest to take down Billy the Bag tomorrow. He agrees, and both go to fall asleep. Billy the Bag was watching over the whole thing, looking forward to killing them both, and starts to laugh evilly. The next morning, at the house, Kyle wakes up and gets out of the bed, and wonders to himself what happened. Billy the Bag happens to be in the room and threatens Kyle's life. Kyle screams, and Billy jumps on his head and slams him on the wall. Billy leaves the room, and checks on the dogs being held in the cage, and taunts them at their expense. Meanwhile, Billy Bob and Joe wake up, and then the two head on out to the base to find Billy the Bag. Once there, Billy Bob and Joe walk around the tree, looking for the bag. Billy Bob, wondering where Billy could possibly be, gets a phone call. He answers the phone, and realizes Billy is on the other end. Billy the Bag tells him the gravity of the situation with the dogs and Kyle, which angers Billy Bob. He threatens the Bag by stating he's going to kick his ass all the way to Texas, and then hangs up the phone. Billy Bob and Joe leave the base, and make a hurry to the house. Meanwhile, Billy the Bag taunts the dogs, and 10 minutes later, the duo arrive at home, and confront the Bag. Billy Bob wants to know how he knows where he lives, and Billy explains he hired multiple assassins to find him to kill him, but most of the assassinations did not go so well. Billy Bob demands to know why Billy wanted him killed in the first place. Billy tells him that he has magical powers, and that he sensed the darkness inside him, being that he doesn't like plastic bags, and believes he should be killed for it, and will not fail this time. Billy Bob is up for the challenge, and tells Joe to step aside. Joe warns him that despite all the training, he's still very dangerous and very powerful. Overconfident with himself, Billy Bob believes this will be an easy fight. He takes off his shirt, and pulls out his knife from his pocket, and prepares to strike Billy. Then, the fight ensues. Billy Bob missed the bag, then the two go one-on-one with each other, with Billy Bob stabbing the bag, and the bag choking on Billy Bob. The bag starts to choke Billy Bob on the ground, but he uses his strength to pull the bag out, and starts to twist and punch him, then pulls out the knife, and starts to stab him again. The bag grabs the knife, and moves Billy Bob's hand around, and tries to stab him, but Billy Bob tries to push the bag away as far as possible. Despite all the effort, the bag successfully and fatally stabs Billy Bob's stomach. Joe screams, as Billy Bob falls down to the ground. Joe is shocked and devastated, then Billy comes up to the bag. Disappointed with his betrayal, Billy grabs the bag, and throws him in the trash. Billy returns to the dogs, and prepares to destroy them. As he starts to evil laugh, a mysterious figure slowly walks toward the bag. That figure is Kyle, and when Billy least expects it, he hits the bag with a tennis racket, knocking him out. He unlocks the cage and gets the dogs out, relieved that they're okay. Kyle rushes to Billy Bob's side, and sees that he's losing tremendous amounts of blood from his stomach. Billy Bob asks him to make sure Billy the Bag is dead, and that the dogs in the house are well taken care of. Kyle doesn't want his friend to die, worried about his unemployment. Billy Bob says his final words, stating Kyle is like a brother to him. Then, passes on. Kyle starts to cry, devastated from the loss of his friend. Kyle turns to Billy the Bag, who is unconscious, and gets really angry at him for what he has done. Kyle throws the bag into the toilet, and then flushes him down, taunting him. Joe cries out for help while trapped in the garbage can. Kyle walks over, and sees the bag and pulls him out. Joe tells him that he's a good bag, and that he'll be there to comfort him. Kyle doesn't say much, as he is emotionally stressed from the death of his friend. He sits on the couch, and continues to cry. 3 months later, Rex is seen going back inside, and heads to the living room. He sits by Kyle's side on the couch. The president on the TV announces a new law that was passed that all plastic bags will be banned. Then the crowd cheers, and Kyle, feeling really happy that his request was approved. Since Joe is also banned, he states he will stay in the house and hide. Then, Kyle starts to think about Billy Bob. He walks over to the shelf, and picks up a picture of Billy Bob, thinking about how much he misses him, and how great of a friend he is. Many hours later at night, Billy the Bag is seen alive and well, crawling out of the sewer lid, having been trapped there for months. Fueled with anger, and not knowing where he is, Billy the Bag shouts out Kyle's name very loudly, planning one day to find him and kill him for what he has done. Thank you all for watching. Do you like this recap video? Let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome content. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Ryan Da Bomb out.